Well, hello, I'm Matt Henley.
And I'm Rain Woods.
And welcome to the Showtime podcast for the Pride of the Mountains Marching Band. Whether you are a current member of the Pride of the Mountains, one of our incredible alumni of the Long Purple Line, or a supporter of the band, we are so happy you've tuned into this episode. Like I said, I'm Matt Henley, and I'm the head director of the Pride of the Mountains Marching Band, and with me is Rain Woods, our chief student archivist.
Heck yeah, what a beautiful day it is to yap about Pride of the Mountains history, isn't it, Matt?
Agreed.
And that's exactly what we're here to do on this podcast. We're talking about the amazing people who have come through this organization and the amazing people who are here now to keep that tradition of excellence and hard work going. And if you ask me, no one practices that excellence and hard work like our leadership team. The Pride of the Mountains leadership was made to be a laboratory for future music educators and also offer leadership roles for students of any major, really. It was one of Bob Buckner's visions for the band when he became director in the early 90s. And it's because of that vision that students in the band today can take on many different roles to learn how to teach, organize, and build culture in the band. Every leadership position has an important part to play in running this band, and every position has a unique way of playing their part. But one of the most unique leadership roles that the Pride of the Mountains has to offer is the staff coordinator position, which is the subject of today's episode. So, Matt, why don't you give us a little rundown on what it is to be a staff coordinator?
Yeah. The staff coordinator is a really unique position, in my opinion. When Bob started being the director of the band in 1991, the year I started teaching the drumline, actually, there was no such position. As a matter of fact, there were student leadership roles certainly within the band, section leaders, that type of thing, but there weren't any what I would call administrative type jobs within the student leadership program. So Bob had this idea. So in 1992, the very next year, he kind of recreated the student leadership program from scratch and came up with this idea of a staff coordinator. Keep in mind that at the time we were both part-time. I was a student actually, and he was part-time. He was not even half-time. So a lot of the administrative duties were difficult to keep up with, and it occurred to him, I think, that based on his own experience of being a high school band director, that a lot of the administrative type duties of a band don't get taught in class. So he thought, well, I want to do a staff coordinator that can coordinate the staff of the marching band and take on some of those roles, take on some of those duties, and that they could learn in kind of a laboratory setting. So yeah, when it first started, it was all about music majors, like people that wanted to be band directors, wanted to be music educators. That's where it all began. Now, obviously, it grew tremendously through the years, and it way outdid anything I ever thought it would do. And I'm strangely more proud of the student leadership team than I even am of what you see on a Saturday. I mean, it's incredible. But the staff coordinator position was really kind of an assistant, little mini assistant band director for one solid year, January through December. And they stayed through the summer, and they started helping run all logistics side of the band. So when it came to running a summer camp, which we eventually started, or just a trip, or booking buses, or whatever it happened to be, they got to learn how to do all of that. And in a safe environment, we weren't going to let them fail, but it was a way for them to learn how to be responsible and to be certainly conscientious and all those wonderful things. But it was a great responsibility. It really, really was. So the very first staff coordinator we ever had was a guy named Marty McCart. I don't think you'd mind me saying his name right now. Marty was an incredible talent, an incredible arranger. He actually went on to be an arranger for Carolina Crown and many, many high-end high school marching groups and competitive groups. But yeah, he was our very first staff coordinator, and then and that of course evolved over time, which we'll get to later in the podcast. But it was a very, very cool thing to watch this thing evolve. And then of course as Bob became half-time, and then eventually full-time, and myself becoming half-time and eventually full-time, that program continued to be so important and an integral part of what we needed. Another part, I think, of why it began and ultimately grew was the band grew in size, but also what we were doing, the amount of events we started hosting. When we first started, there was no summer camp, there was no summer symposium, there was no tournament of champions, none of those things existed. And also keep in mind, everybody knows and loves Miss Sheila Frizzell, but Sheila was assigned to us and the entire School of Music. So because of that, her duties of being what I would call a true administrative assistant to us was impossible for her. She handled our money and the budgets and all that stuff, but when it came to any type of administrative help, we were kind of on our own. And that was where the staff coordinator stepped in and really helped us with those types of difficult kind of duties that we just needed help with. So it's been really, really cool to watch evolve and grow. And I look forward to talking more about that throughout this podcast. And today we actually have a couple of people with us. We have a current staff coordinator, Mr. Caden Hopkins, and we also have a former staff coordinator from back in 2007, I believe, Miss Jennifer Clawley. And Jennifer, thank you so much for driving all the way in from South Carolina. So
of course.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Jennifer, do me a favor and just tell me a little bit about your history of kind of how you came through the program, how you ended up at Western Carolina, and just a little bit about your story of WCU.
Yeah, so I am from South Carolina, and I had never heard of Western. This would have been right about 2003, but my high school band director was friends with Bob, and one day he reached out, seemed out of the blue to me, and called to talk to me. In the morning, before I was getting ready to go to school or whatnot, and he just kind of told me about Western. Actually, told me about the leadership program, and I got off the phone and I was like, I guess I'll check it out because I hadn't really decided where I was going to school, but I knew that I wanted to major in music education. And so that spring, I went and checked out Western and Catamount Gap. Did a lot, of course, and that magic feeling we all get when we go through there. And I was supposed to have a meeting with Bob Buckner. And he was running late. He was over working with the high school band or something. And so I ended up starting out meeting, of course, with you, Matt. And what stood out to me when I first walked in the band office and talked with Matt was that it felt like I belonged there. It felt like I was wanted there as a person and a musician. And I just kind of felt like I was home. And so I only applied to one place. I only applied to Western. And I got to finally see the band for the first time at Tournament of Champions my senior year, and then also got to see them in Indianapolis at Grand Nationals in 2003. And
I remember that. I remember being in the audience. We had performed in 2003, and you'd received, I believe, a scholarship from BOA.
Yes. And
it popped up, and you got kind of interviewed on the Jumbotron, and they asked where you were going, and Western and our entire band lost their mind. And
it was the coolest thing ever.
It was a very cool moment there in Lucas Oil. So very, very cool.
Caden, representing the current staff co-position, started in 2021 and is in his second year of staff coordinating. He's majoring in middle grades math education, plans on graduating next spring, and has a long-term goal of becoming a college professor to teach new teachers. That's so awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
So tell us a bit about you coming to Western and joining Pride of the Mountains.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of around the time whenever it was that time to make the decision of what university to go to, everyone's favorite decision where your mother sits you down and is like, hey, you need to figure your life out. It was one of those things of I had no idea where I wanted to go. I've always been a fan. I knew I didn't want to go somewhere hot. That was the only thing I had, But my mother sat me down and was like, you've been doing marching band all throughout high school. You were drum major last year. What about Western? And I was like, okay. I had actually never seen Western perform before. And so it was one of those things. She was like, they have this amazing marching program. You can continue it in college, go and do it. And I was like, okay. So I did the smart thing and I applied to colleges, and the only college I applied to was Western. So it's a good thing I got in, had no backup options.
That's crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah. Fun little fact. I did not apply to any other college.
My man.
It was definitely one of those things of I wanted to come to Western and I wanted to continue marching band. And it was definitely the reputation that the band had built up that my mother looked at me and was like, hey, you're going to love this. And of course, when your mother says something, you listen to it. At least if you don't, But yeah, it was definitely one of those things of as soon as I heard about the band, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I was like, I love the mountains. My family has a mountain house in Boone. We were like, oh yeah, I'm going to go up there. But
that's crazy. It was almost the exact same situation for me. I was looking at different colleges, and Mom was like, I went to Western, and I was like, oh, cool. Do they have a good marching band? And she was like, yes. And I'm like, okay, bet I'm sold. I didn't even need to see it or anything. Yeah.
Where do I sign?
That was all I needed.
That is wild. I will tell you, it's inspiring to hear these kinds of stories because many students have come here without ever even seeing the band, but the reputation of the band precedes it so much that they just kind of buy into what they've heard from other people. So that's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Pretty cool. I'm curious though. Obviously pre-staff coordinator, that's usually a job that's held in either a junior or senior year of a student here. But obviously you were a marcher before that. Your first, second year, whatever, you were a marcher. Tell me about your experience with that. Like, what was your favorite show to march, Jennifer, and your experience there?
Yeah. So it's a hard question because I can bounce back and forth, but I think that I would have to say my favorite show that I marched was 2004, my freshman year, Bring on the Heat. And it was just this, I had come from a fairly large high school band program, but nothing compared to what I walked into there. And just being able to be in this huge section of flutes and piccolos, and it was a lot of hard work, but there were so many good times, like Bob would always say. And it was just this amazing experience. And I remember being at Inca, and it was feeling like a rock star for the first time and just that. And it blew me away. And so then for my sophomore and junior years, I was on the historian staff, now known as the archive staff. And I was also one of the flute and piccolo section leaders during those years and definitely learned a lot from those experiences for sure.
Yeah, that's the whole goal. What about you, Caden? What do you think?
Definitely shows that I have marched. Definitely of the ones that I've marched, the favorite overall show was Let It Burn. Favorite individual, just like drill spot and marching around the field, most definitely Feeling Lucky. Feeling Lucky was the last year that I had marched, and I pretty much had one of the hardest drill sets, and it was so fun. Like backward jazz running on the 50. I mean, it was at 176. Cannot be beat. You know?
Right.
Definitely kept me on my toes for sure, but definitely shows I marched. I would say Let It Burn is up there and will always hold a special place in my heart.
Very cool. Yeah, I think as people come through the program, there are certain ones that resonate with you more than others, either from a meaningful standpoint of the show itself. Sometimes it's the experiences of where we're going and what we did, as far as travel or whatever, or it's just the people that were around you. Let's get real. I mean, the people that you are marching with in your section, the people you're around every single day, you build some pretty special bonds. So I think that's all really, really cool. And yeah, and you, Caden, you being a math middle school education type major, it's wild how much you just invested yourself in the entire School of Music. I mean, you president of Kappa Kappa Psi?
Yeah, I just now left the presidency actually.
Yeah.
But this past year I served as president.
Yeah, and been super involved with that, which, of course, if you out there that don't know what that is, it's a band service fraternity. Then their entire mission is to help the band and the entire School of Music, really. But it's just been really cool to watch you do that. Why do you think you were so drawn just to the music department in general, not just the marching band?
Definitely being told what to do. It was whenever I came in.
You're a good soldier?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Whenever I first came in here to Western and started marching my freshman year, I had gotten pretty close to Emily Faust and some other merchandise staff members. And they actually, to quote, we were sitting in Ramsey one day because there was a rain delay for the game. And one of them looked at me and said, "So why are you not on a staff yet?" And I was like, "Well, I'm a freshman, And they're like, "Well, Caden, let me go get the chief of merchandise, and we're going to get you on merchandise staff." Well, of course, at that time I was marketing, but
Right.
So they brought Maddie Farmer over, and Maddie Farmer goes, "All right, yeah, sure." Pretty much, and that was in the discussion. So yeah, it's at that moment forward, it just snowballed. It was one of those things of I got my foot in the door, someone grabbed it and yanked me in, and at this point now I'm drowning somewhere. But, I love it. I've loved every second of it.
Well, yeah. Let's get real. I mean, all of these service positions, all of them, but especially staff coordinator and merchandise, and any job, is a very selfless job. I mean, it's selfless service to your fellow band people, and you've always been just an amazing, selfless person. I've always admired that about you for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, like we said, there are so many different leadership positions for people to take up. Obviously, before you guys became staff coordinators, you both did different things, historian staff, merchandise, and you were also both section leaders. But from that, you guys went to staff coordinator, which kind of goes away, kind of divided from the instructional leadership that y'all were in previously. So what made you guys want to do staff coordinator?
I was an overachiever. No, one of the reasons that I even toured Western in the first place was because Bob had told me about the student leadership program, and how I could have these opportunities and experiences that undergrads couldn't typically have most places, and I really wanted that. And I'd been so impressed with the staff coordinators that had come before me, especially Jamie Lee in 2004, who'd kind of taken me under her wing. And my freshman year, kind of like you, ended up involved, but doing the trophies and ads and program sales with TOC, and that was just so neat. And I just kind of wanted my turn. And so when I got to my interview with one copy of my resume, and I handed it to Bob, and I didn't have one for Matt. And of course, he immediately addressed that. And I was just devastated because I was like, I have destroyed my chances. So I was pretty worried. And for the record, I have shown up to every interview in my adult professional life with at least 5 copies of everything. Thanks.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. You know, that's kind of a fun fact too. You know, people that don't know out there, every single job within our student leadership team, they have to come and do a professional interview. They have to bring a resume and a cover letter and wear nice clothes and sit in that chair and answer questions and do the adult thing. And that is something that most students don't get to do until they graduate, and they do their very first job interview is the first time they do a professional interview. And anybody that's done one knows how nerve-wracking that can be, and the preparedness of it and being well-spoken and thinking on your feet, it's difficult. And so anybody that gets in our program, they stay with us, they're going to do that at least 3 times. And that's so good for them to learn from those experiences because, we're trying to teach real-world skills too, not just band stuff, you know. So what about you, Caden? Why did you want to be a staff coordinator?
Kind of going along that snowball effect and people grabbing my leg and pulling me out the door. It was at Inca. I vividly remember it. We were sitting there, the line, first off, Inca has the best food. I love Inca so much.
They're good to us, for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I will sing Inca's praises every day long. Anyway, the line for food was like kind of wrapped around the corner a little bit because the whole band showed up at once, you know, as we do. And Madeline Heaton was standing underneath one of the tents. She was kind of just overseeing everything, making sure everyone was being nice, being respectful, all that sort of stuff, make sure there was no issues. And I've always respected Madeline. She's always been a mentor to me. I marched with her for the past, that was her first year as a staff coordinator. I had marched with her for the time previous. And I walked over to her and I was like, just started talking to her. And she was like, Caden, how would you like to be a staff coordinator? You know, it was one of those things because we were sitting there talking about the logistics of, unfortunately, I 100% nerded out and was like, oh, I think this line could be if we did yada, yada, yada. She was like, how would you like to be a staff coordinator? And from that moment forward, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll throw my name in the hat. You know, I was like, I'm not going to get it. Like, Matt doesn't know who I am. You know?
And yet I did.
Oh, yeah. And then for the next, I think it was a couple months leading up to the interview process, Madeline, apparently she was berating the directors like, hey, I want to work with Caden. Hey, I want to work with Caden. Hey, choose Caden.
She spoke your praises, for
yeah.
sure.
And I kept looking at her. I was like, Madeline, you're going to speak my praises so much. I'm going to walk in there and they're going to expect this almighty being and I'm going to be me.
Right.
But yeah, definitely just kind of following the track of someone looking at me going, hey, I need you in this position, or hey, I want you in this position. That's what absolutely made me go, okay, I'm interested for sure.
Awesome.
All right, so as Matt has stated, staff coordinator, lots of responsibilities, lots of things that you guys do. Y'all probably have the biggest to-do list out of any student position ever.
A few pages.
A few.
A few pages.
Yeah. It's a novel.
Oh, yeah.
With chapters.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of great things and a lot of things to do. I don't know how to put it more lightly, but yeah. But what was your guys' favorite thing to do of the many things that you did as staff coordinators?
That is a hard question because it really was an amazing experience through and through. I think there's 2 things that kind of stand out to me. I think one was the morning of TOC, and I was up in the press box, and it was well before sunrise, and I was just kind of looking out at the fog on the field, and then I see the lights from the first 2 the first buses for the first band pulling in, and it was like this kind of almost surreal moment of thinking this thing that we'd worked so hard to put together was finally here and finally happening. And of course, Summer Symposium. I think that was one of the hardest things that I had ever done. And it was definitely a roller coaster. But I remember on the last night watching the students they did an egg drop challenge activity. And that was just really neat. I was just so excited just seeing all of these high schoolers that were just loving being in Cullowhee. And that meant a lot. And it was great. Until, of course, just about every one of their containers managed to make it through all the drops, including all the way up to the roof, which was not supposed to happen. It was supposed to be an elimination thing. And the clinician, a Western grad named Bobby Lambert, informed me that it was because I had given them way too many materials and made it way too easy. Whoops. But I do think that my favorite thing was just being in the office. I learned so much about speaking professionally, including using adverbs and prepositions correctly. Thanks, Matt.
You are welcome. And thank you, Mom.
Especially on the phone, and how to pay attention to details in writing emails and letters, and making sure that the band's communications and interactions gave off the best possible impression at all times. And most of all, it was just sitting in the office and listening to Bob and Matt talk. I think I probably learned more from that than anything else, and definitely would not trade a second of it for anything. Yeah,
That's awesome. What about you, man?
Definitely, and this the easiest question I'm going to answer at any point. Definitely the Rookie Pride program. Being in charge of band camp last year and being in charge of that Rookie Pride program put so much pride and joy into it. Trying to really bring it back to its roots. I remember we had multiple conversations of like, Matt, how do we fix this?
Right. Yeah.
And it was one of those things of the first time we went out there for an activity and just going out there and going, all right, we're gonna have some fun now, and everyone's like, what? Fun in band camp? What are you talking about?
That's absurd.
Yeah, like what? But definitely it was one of those situations of just all the planning that went into it and then just seeing it and come to fruition, especially the lip sync battle. Absolutely one of my favorite things. Some people hate it. If you hate it, oh well. But definitely one of my favorite things, walking out. I did this bit last year of walking out with a new microphone each time. First time was a microphone. The second time was like a rug or something.
I just recently added a couple pictures of that to our archives.
Oh,
and that is the funniest
that is
thing.
amazing.
Funniest thing.
I think my final one was a broken cymbal, which immediately got me targeted by the drum line going, hey, where'd you find that? And I was like,
where did you find that?
It was anyway. Moving forward, it has been returned home safely. Just to let you know, it is safe. But definitely just putting in all that planning and really just seeing it come to fruition. That was one of my favorite times. Another one was TOC sitting up in the press box with Mr. Tim Wise. Mm-hmm. Spending way too long up there, roughly probably about 14 to 16 hours up there.
Right.
Loved every second of it, getting a chance to talk to Mr. Wise, getting a chance to set up all this technology and things like that, which, of course, I am surprised he knew how to set up the technology. But
easy.
Yeah, we'll move past that. But just having the opportunity, kind of like how you said, just listening to Bob and Matt talk in the office, just getting a moment to talk with Tim, easily one of my favorite parts from last year of just being able to learn from someone like that.
Yeah. Two things from those comments that come to mind for me. Number one is, it kind of breaks down that wall a little bit of student professor. Not that the hierarchy is not obvious. It's not that. It's that you get to have more real world conversations, meaningful conversations, friendly conversations, and you get to break that barrier down. I've always thought of college as being like that gateway to adulthood, really, and breaking it down. That's why Bob and I talked about it way back when. Like, they're going to call me Mr. Buckner, or they're going to call me Bob. And the whole reason for going with first names was to start the process of breaking down those barriers. Because when you get in adulthood, you don't walk around with your peers calling them Mr. whatever. So just trying to break that down to where you're seen more like a person that's working with you instead of somebody you're working for. So that's why all of that started. And the second thing I think is really cool is that a lot of the best ideas we've had in regard to our program and how we set things up and the structure of things have come from staff coordinators, people that have been in the trenches doing the thing, going, I know we've been doing this like this forever, but what if we thought about this? And the RPP, the Rookie Pride program, started from a staff coordinator. That was Daniel Scott, way back when, who came up with this idea of having a program that would allow our incoming freshmen to have a place that was more of a safe space for at least a couple of days. And it allowed us to teach them things that, and I remember he and I and others sitting around talking about, okay, what should it look like? What should matter to an incoming freshman? And I just remember when I went to college, the things that I was scared of were the silly things. Like somebody would say, let's meet at the creek lot. And I would be too scared to say, where's the creek lot? What does that mean? All the slang, all the stuff that you learn while you're here. So we took this thing at this period of time, like, okay, let's teach them those things. So let's do a scavenger hunt around campus so that we can teach them those places in a fun way. Let's do funny, silly things like lip sync battles or small group experiences where they learn the sense of team and get to know their fellow freshmen, and get to learn our song, our alumni, our fight song, or the alma mater and the traditions of the band before all the veterans show up, which can be intimidating. So that was the whole reason for doing that, and all of that came from him and previous staff coordinators of having those conversations of how can we do that, and it made us better, So I love that aspect of it. Well, out of curiosity, Jennifer, this one's for you. Like, what you've been out there in the adult world for a while now, being a professional in multiple different capacities and jobs. What are some skills, if you will, that you maybe learned as a staff coordinator that have benefited you as an adult?
Absolutely. It's huge. I did start out my career as a middle school and high school band director. And of course, I used so much that I learned as a staff coordinator. But after a while, life kind of happened and a new life kind of found me. And I now I work for South Carolina Adult Education. And in my capacity, I both get to help students who left high school without graduating to earn their diplomas. And I also support our adult education teachers across the state. Ironically, in math and science are my primary areas, believe it or not.
Let's go. Let's
Right?
go. Represent.
Exactly, right? But anyways, so I get opportunities to provide professional development sessions and just provide instructional support to teachers and go out and, help them figure out what's going wrong and all sorts of conversations and things like that. And it's so much fun. But it was kind of funny, kind of interesting, I guess, because so obviously as a young teacher, there were a lot of mistakes that I would have made if I had not already made them in, like you said, that safe environment, of being there. And I, made them, messed it up, learned a lot from it, typically, thanks to Matt, of course. But what's wild is how much more I use those things now in my current capacity. I remember I was actually with my boss last summer when I saw the announcement about Matt being named the interim director. And I was, responded a little emotionally to that. I was pretty excited. And I'm sitting here trying to come up with the words to explain to my non-music boss why this mattered so much and why I was responding the way that I did. And I basically ended up saying that this particular person had been instrumental in an undergrad leadership experience that I had that equipped me with my good skills and that were really all of the reasons that she chooses to employ me really had come out of this program. So that was huge.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. Well, Kate, you being a current student, talked about how is staff coordinator impacting your life now?
Oh, absolutely. It takes up so much of my time, Scott.
It does.
It's definitely one of those things of, I didn't start off in the education degree here at Western. I actually came in as an engineering major at first. And then Calc 2 happened and I cannot solve derivatives.
Neither can I. That's why I teach paradiddles.
Oh, yeah. There's some sort of curse around me, but that's not what this podcast is about. It's definitely one of those things of I've always had a passion for teaching. And, I have my fiance to thank for that, where she looked at me and was like, well, Caden, you can teach. And everyone knows you can teach. So let's just go into teaching. I knew that I did not necessarily want to teach for the rest of my life per se. And I knew that I wanted to move up into actually administration. I wanted to move up and be a principal or work in the school system, something like that. And this position is so good at preparing you for that. This is the perfect position because I'm getting that hands-on experience. I'm getting my teaching experience through the school, and I'm getting my administrative experience through this marching band. And I mean, I know we're talking about the staff coordinator position right now, but that goes to show every single one of our positions teaches you that. Going from merchandise staff to kind of working underneath someone and working with someone about inventory, things like that, things that you have to worry about in that real world perspective, and going to section leader of actually being in charge of your own team. I mean, that is all just experience that you learn step by step by step along the way. And then especially coming into this position and actually being responsible for organizing all of that, it really made me realize that, yeah, this is what I want to do. Like I know my path forward now for sure, and this position helped me find that. It's one of those things that I got into it, and I'm so happy that I did.
Well, I'm certainly glad you did too.
May I
think,
add on to that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, just to chime in with what Caden was saying, it's this experience being a staff coordinator teaches you how to think.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
we laugh, but we also know that it's extremely true because you're handed these huge projects and huge expectations, and not always all of the little directions or details that you need in order to do it. And that's intentional and a very good thing. And so you have to sit down and work with your team to figure it out. And you flounder a bit, of course. And, we have this space where we may not have always felt it because we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, but we are in, like Matt said earlier, that safe space where we can make mistakes and learn lessons, from incredible educators that genuinely care about us as professionals and as people. And if we had made those mistakes in our grown-up jobs, we'd have been fired. It wouldn't have gone well.
Absolutely.
Yes. And so we know how to do things the right way because we have people that are taking the time to teach us those things. And I mean, watching folks like Matt and Dylan and Bob and all of these folks, you learn how to be relentless in a good way. They pull off all of these amazing things. And, you watch them fight for the band and fight for their students as groups and as individuals, which we all cannot thank you enough for. But it's just what, personally, as a professional, I'm striving to be every day. And, whether you're a music educator or a math educator or anything else, that's what's, making that difference. And I'm so glad that Bob called me that day. And all of the horrible out-of-state tuition loans in the world, are worth it for sure.
Well, I tell you, that's a good interjection into, basically, yes, the whole thing was started for music education majors. It just was. It was supposed to be a laboratory, and it still is to this day, a laboratory for music education majors. But to see it grow over time and students starting to realize, now, wait a minute, these skills will help me no matter what my field of endeavor is going to be. And, I look back in 2019, we had literally every single major on campus represented in the marching band. We haven't looked at this year, but I would guarantee it's close. And, you might not know out there too, is 76% of the marching band this past fall were non-music majors. So that's a lot of students that still want to be involved. This year, for our student leadership team, had 146 interviews, and I think we came out with 114 jobs, something like that. So it's just an amazing to have seen it grow and for students to see the value. Because yes, these are things we're trying to teach real world skills that you simply will not get in a classroom. These are the kinds of skills you don't learn them until you do them. And the staff coordinator job is baptism by fire. There's no doubt about it. That's why I'm surprised you came back for a second time there, Caden.
I love my Matt Henley hallway talks.
Don't we all?
Oh yeah.
But I think
Staffco PTSD. Right
yeah, PTSD. But yes. I tell you, it really, you like I said, you learn from doing. You learn from real accountability. Really, and it's one of the few times I kind of get a little bit of a kick every year out of it. It's just you don't really know what it's like to really be in charge of something until you're really in charge of something. And I think staff coordinators at the beginning of the job, beginning of the year, they expect you to be, okay, I'm in charge of summer symposium. All right, great. Now tell me what to do. And then you're not told what to do. You're just given like, okay, here's a guideline. Get started. Let me know if you have questions. The next thing you know, you realize very quickly you're actually in charge, and that level of accountability and responsibility can be daunting, and yet you learn through the process. So I think the whole thing's just been awesome to watch.
Having been through all of our archives and seen so many of our student records from many, 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 many years, like all the way back to the 70s even. We started out with one staff coordinator in 92, like you said. There have been a couple years after that we had two. When Jennifer was staff co, there were four. And there have been a couple years where we actually had five. And now we have three. So I'm just really curious, like, how has the number of staff co's per season, like, changed? Like, why is that?
Well, that's a great question. Well, the first obvious thing that happened was the band just got bigger. In 1992, I don't know exactly how many were in the band, but it was just under 100, right at 100, maybe, possibly. I know the first year in 1991 there were 88, so I don't know what it was in 92. But it was just the size of the band. And once again, keep in mind, I said it again, there's a lot of these very large projects like our Summer Symposium Camp for high school students and directors, our Tournament of Champions, band contest, all of these things didn't exist at all. So as time grew and we started, we do what we do. We're our own worst enemies. We keep adding things to our plate, to our job titles that weren't there before, totally by choice. And we do that because we know it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing for the program. So with that, we didn't add directors, that's for sure. It was just Bob and I for many, many years. And so we need more help. We need more administrative help because there were more duties. So that's when we started. We added 2, then we added 3. And basically, like when we did 4, and I don't remember how many each year, and we did, you're right, it was crazy. We had 5 once or twice, something like that. And then we went back to it. It was all about finding that equilibrium. We don't want to overwork our students to where they're failing school or failing their lives in other capacities. We want it to be challenging, but to be balanced. That was why. When we got up to 5, we realized that there wasn't enough for them to do individually. We got to 4, once again, it just felt like, and we got to 3, we kind of arrived at 3 was probably the right number. And that way you divvy out all of the responsibilities, and everybody had enough to do, but it wasn't killing them either, So that was why. That was totally the reason why. It was just about the responsibilities and trying to measure that. But I guess another thing I would talk about just is how it's kind of changed over time is just the fact that it's not just been the number of staff coordinators, but it's been the duties themselves as well. I think that we have grown to a place where we also added another director. I think it was 2007 when John Henson came on board.
John Henson.
Yeah. And
bro said, we didn't add any directors. And I'm like, John Henson probably just like sensed a disturbance in the force.
John Henson somewhere just kind of shut it.
Well, but it was Bob and I from 1991 to 2006. I mean, that was a long time. And then we added John, which was wonderful, killer guy, wonderful teammate. And when we did that, we were able to kind of, back then we would assign a director to a staff coordinator, right? We kind of did it like that a little bit. And then we started realizing, no, we should probably divvy out the director's responsibilities. And then whatever that responsibility is, like let's say I'm in charge of, as a director, the student tracks of Summer Symposium, I would work with that Summer Symposium staff coordinator. So we started figuring all of that out. A little bit's been by just experimentation, like what was the best ways we did this. Then we added things like caption coordinators and things like that. We're in charge of our upper brass, our lower brass, woodwinds, et cetera, and how could they help them. Then we had chiefs of things, the chief of our uniforms, the chief of marketing and merchandise, et cetera. We assigned them to those chiefs so that we could have better continuity and connection with the office itself. So they become kind of a liaison, if you will, to our other staffs that were out there working. So like I said, it's a little bit been about trial and error and stuff, but overall I've been really proud of how it's evolved.
Yeah, as the archives chief, I can definitely say thank you so much for putting Caden in charge of me. I think he's the only one that has the patience for my many ideas and sporadic projects.
I hate to admit it, but probably. I've loved every second of it. It's, if I can real quick, I'm so sorry.
No.
It's one of those things of, no? Okay. It's one of those things, especially where just watching the program coming in in 2021, during COVID and things like that. It's one of those things of watching the program grow, and even in the past 5 years, like it's one of those things of just, it is absolutely evolving every single year, every single day. Back in Higher Ground, that was my first time, even seeing the marching band ever actually march from the outside perspective. And, obviously with the hurricane, everything like that, it was one of those things of, I remember us sitting in the office, and I remember looking at, I don't remember who, I think I looked at Madeline and Michael, and I was like, I don't know how the band's going to come back from this. Like, I don't know how we're going to fix this.
That's scary.
It was one of those things of like, but everyone just came in, and it felt like there was another extreme shift in the marching band, and that's one of those things of like, that's just something that happens over time, and with good leadership, with Matt at the helm, it's been one of those things of just watching the band evolve, and just building those connections. Ha 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 ha.
Hey. Own it. I love it.
But that's one of those things of, we will sing Matt's praises every single day, but Matt has made this program, obviously Bob built it, but Matt has made it, in
Absolutely.
my opinion.
For sure. I see it all the time in our history.
Well, I appreciate that. It's been an honor, that's for sure. And you're right, though. I think, any program worth their salt is going to continue to evolve and grow in some way. Because if you're not, you're going backwards. And I've always believed in just forward thinking. I think I learned that from Bob. It's not a never look back, because I think it's very important to look back at our history. I'm so appreciative of our history. We do stand on the shoulders of giants that made this program what it is, and why students want to be part of it today is because of what they saw in the past, and the reputation of the program. And we still have a lot to accomplish. We still have a lot to achieve, and I'm just excited about where it's all going.
Yeah. Well, Jennifer, Caden, thank you guys so much for your input on this, your continued work for the band, even, well after leaving it. Jennifer, it's so great to see how much you still do for this organization well after the fact. And, your guys' viewpoints on this position is so interesting, and I love to hear about it. But we also can't forget that you guys are just two people in a huge line of staff co's that have come through this band and gave their heart and soul to this organization. So, I just want to take a moment and give a shout out to any and all staff co's that may be listening to this right now. Thank you so much for your loyalty, dedication, contribution, and selfless sacrifice to this band. Thank you for continuing to be the shoulders, the giants that this current band stands on. Matt said it a million times, and I will also continue to say this a million times, but this band did not just happen. This band came from years and years and years of student leaders like you guys, who wanted to do work to make this organization as outstanding as possible. So, Matt, any last words?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, I know we're currently, this podcast is all about the staff coordinator position, but obviously many eras before the current one were before that. And, this band has a rich history here in the mountains of North Carolina, and tons of leaders before Bob came around, and some incredible people that I've met since being in this organization. It all matters. And from the marching cats before that, and by the way, we're actually going to be doing some vintage stuff in our merchandise this year for all you marching cats members out there.
Very excited.
Very cool. And we're constantly embracing our alumni and our history. As a matter of fact, a lot of this year's show, this Connect show, is about connecting who we were with who we are and who we want to be. So be on the lookout for that this fall. But it really is about connecting with all of you alumni out there. So it's we appreciate you so much. I love you for being the ones that gave their time, that gave their energy, gave the sweat, so that our current membership can just continue to evolve and excel. So I think that's all great. And speaking of which, I'm saying it now, all you staff coordinators out there, next year, you realize 2026 will be the 35th edition of staff coordinators. So we are officially doing a staff coordinator reunion at homecoming in the fall. Yes, every staff coordinator out there, previous staff coordinator, are invited. Like I said, there'll be a homecoming of 2026 next fall. So make plans now to be there. It's going to be a big party. I cannot wait to see all you lovely people all in one place. It's gonna be incredible. I cannot wait.
The stories that will come out at that one.
And I will not be there because I don't want to hear all the negative things about me. No, I'm kidding.
We're
It's
sitting
good.
out there like, you remember that time he
Remember that
talked to
time?
us in the hallway and he looked at us and
As
said,
soon-
what was
yeah,
that?
As soon as I hear you remember that time, I'll be out the door. But
Practice room.
yeah. We all must learn in certain ways, but it's been super fun.
All right. Well, thank you once again, Jennifer and Caden, for being here with us today. And thank you guys so much for just being awesome people and awesome members of the Long Purple Line. Thank you so much for listening into this episode of the Showtime podcast. Stay tuned for the next episode. A special thank you to our main man, Sam Wallace, and everyone who supports the Pride of the Mountains Marching Band. Shout out to our friends over on the Western Wednesdays podcast. Be sure to check them out to stay connected with the WCU alumni.
And Long Purple Line can't wait to see you cheering in the stands. Current members can't wait to see you on the field.
And of course, go Cats.